I think Trump thinks his personality alone and American businesses in that area would be enough of a deterrent for Putin. But we just don't know enough of the details. And that's part of the problem with this whole negotiation process is first it was just, America and Russia, and then America and Ukraine. Now they brought in some of the Europeans to be part of the conversation, but we don't actually know how much they shared with them. But it's not very organized. It's not very strategic. It doesn't seem like it's connected. And, like President Trump, it changes. The goals change. The strategy changes all the time, depending on his mood.
President Trump has said the US will take a pass on further Ukraine peace talks if Moscow or Kyiv make it very difficult to reach a deal. Here he is speaking to reporters in the Oval Office last night.
If for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass. But hopefully we won't have to do that. And Marco's right in saying we want to see it end.
It follows a similar message from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who said yesterday morning that Washington would move on if no progress is made within days. The big question is, where does this leave the war in Ukraine? Karin Von Hippel is Chair of Defence and Security Practice at Deterrent Strategies. Karin, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What are the implications if the US pulls out of these negotiations entirely?
Yeah, I mean, the implications are negative for Ukraine, no matter how you look at it. I think Trump doesn't fully understand that negotiating an end to a complicated, long, horrific war is not like making a business deal, and you do need to put some time into it. He did do that the first time around when he negotiated the Abraham Accords. I mean, his son-in-law did that, but he certainly allowed his son-in-law the time to do it properly. It's not, an in and out scenario. And of course, it's only going to be negative for Ukraine because Ukraine is on the back foot. They need support. And it would be very likely the U.S. would withdraw support in that instance.
Although if you look at what has happened so far, obviously, Ukraine has agreed the outline of a mineral deal. So far, there have been no concessions from Russia. President Trump has said that he is going to apply pressure on Russia. We're not really seeing any evidence of that right now.
No, and I haven't really heard him say that very much. He's sort of hinted at it once or twice, but he hasn't been public about it. And it almost makes you wonder if Trump and Putin quietly had a chat and Putin said, look, we're winning, give us a bit more time. And he's saying, OK, we just don't know the extent of their relationship. But we do know he's obviously buying into more of the Russia propaganda, the Russia version of this whole conflict than the Ukrainian. And every other day he makes some negative comment about Ukraine starting this war, Ukraine provoking Russia, etc.
It's an interesting tactic that Trump is adopting, because in some ways he's kind of making veiled threats to Putin. I'm just wondering if that's something that Putin responds well to.
Possibly. I mean, I think Putin, the only two people he potentially listens to at the global stage would be President Trump and President Xi of China. But I'm not sure he sees an incentive to do it besides, getting rid of sanctions. They've kind of managed to, make some money despite that, although recently oil price drop has not been helping them. But, it's hard to say what kind of pressure he can put on Russia at this stage, given so much pressure has been put on Russia already.
If we did get to the scenario where the US just decides to step back, isn't going to be involved in talks anymore, do European allies, I mean, we've seen obviously Sir Keir Starmer and we've seen Emmanuel Macron stepping up from a European perspective. Can the Europeans do enough to influence what happens?
And they certainly can do more, and they can do more in terms of, military support, financial support, and they're already gearing up to do that. They can't do it for that long, and that's really going to be the bigger challenge. It's interesting from what we've heard of the peace deal on offer that the Americans proposed, it did include some security guarantees in exchange for this whole mineral deal with Ukraine. And don't forget, the mineral deal initially came from the Ukrainians because they thought that's something Trump might be interested in. They wanted security guarantees. I don't know what that means when that Rubio said there would be, or it was reported that there would be some security guarantees, because the Americans have been reluctant to offer that in the past. I think Trump thinks his personality alone and American businesses in that area would be enough of a deterrent for Putin. But we just don't know enough of the details. And that's part of the problem with this whole negotiation process is first it was just, America and Russia, and then America and Ukraine. Now they brought in some of the Europeans to be part of the conversation, but we don't actually know how much they shared with them. But it's not very organized. It's not very strategic. It doesn't seem like it's connected. And, like President Trump, it changes. The goals change. The strategy changes all the time, depending on his mood.
I was interested earlier on, we spoke to an Iranian expert who said that Iran has basically gone into these nuclear talks with the US because of Trump's strong language saying basically you do a deal with us or there's going to be military action. And that's been taken very seriously in Tehran. I just wonder if that's not going to work, this kind of tough talk with Russia. Is this going to lead to maybe Ukraine making more concessions so that some deal is made? I'm just wondering if this kind of tough guy talk is going to work in this scenario with Ukraine in the way that it has done to some extent with Iran.
Yeah, although in Iran as well, the Americans have been unclear. Is it complete dismantlement of the nuclear program, or will they allow a civil nuclear program? And they've changed their mind on that a couple times. Steve Witkoff, who seems to be doing everything for Donald Trump, had some good conversations with him. And then the end result looked a lot like the Obama deal that Trump dismantled the first time around. And then they said, no, we can't do that. So they've been all over the place again on Iran. And it's not clear to me that they're going to get, to somewhere that we all want them to be. I think Trump is also reluctant to go to war to cause another conflict in Iran, in the Middle East in particular. So he is threatening that, but I'm not sure he would, maybe they would enable Israel to do some bombing, but I don't think it would be an all-out conflict in Iran. And Ukraine, of course, is already conceded so much, even on this deal that's supposedly on the table. From what we know, it seems that they have to recognize, for now anyway, that most of the territory Russia occupies, they won't get back in the immediate future, that they won't join NATO. And I'm not sure what Russia gives up. I mean, so, this is really the problem with the whole thing. There's just not a lot of clarity.
Karin, thank you for speaking to us this morning. I'm grateful to you for your time. That's Karin Von Hippel,
Sure.
who is Chair of Defence and Security Practice at Ardern Strategies.